Welcome back. For today's timely show, we have an extremely timely guest. Dick Morris served as a special advisor and political consultant to both Bill and Hillary Clinton for 20 years. In fact, he's said to know their strengths, their weaknesses, and even their deepest secrets. All that inside knowledge plays a major role in his latest book entitled Armageddon: How Trump Can Beat Hillary. Dick is a co-author of 6 New York Times bestsellers in all and a regular political commentator on Fox News and other networks. Thanks for joining us, Dick.
Thanks, but it's 12 times bestsellers.
12 times. Gosh, well, I'm sorry to shortchange you by 50%. Given the topic and title of your book, I imagine you're in extreme demand these days as a talk show guest. Explain why you called your book Armageddon.
Well, because I think that this is the ultimate fight of good against evil. And I do feel, in a certain sense, it's the last battle. If we lose this election, there will never be another. And by that, I do not mean that we'll become a dictatorship, but I do mean that Hillary will let 10 or 12 million currently illegal immigrants vote and appoint Supreme Court judges that will sustain that, and will never win another election for 20 years. I do mean by that she'll let millions of immigrants and refugees in, seeding our country with potential terrorists. And we'll be like France. We'll be unable to exorcise this plague because it will have taken such hold in our midst.
You're saying, in essence, we're going to lose control of our own country, is what I hear you say, I believe.
Exactly. And the third thing is that the number of people on welfare will pass the number of people who work.
Yes.
Right now, there are 107 on welfare, not counting Social Security or Medicare, but Medicaid, food stamps, welfare, and the like. 107 million, and the number of full-time working is 114. When Obama took office, it was 70 on welfare and 137 who work. Under Hillary, those lines will cross. So whether it's the becoming a dependent population or being seeded with potential terrorists, or whether it's packing the electorate, this is, in a sense, the last election.
Interesting. So I know in your book you talk about a dozen reasons why Hillary should not be president. I know you've just highlighted a couple. If you could give us a few more, the ones that are perhaps the strongest reasons, I'd love to hear them.
Well, first, she's a compulsive and pathological liar. Whether it's saying that she was named after Sir Edmund Hillary, or that she landed under sniper fire in Bosnia, or that she didn't send or receive classified emails, or saying that she wanted to enlist in the military as a Marine. Her life is just festooned with fantasy stories that are not reality. And Hillary, when pressed, rarely tells the truth. Secondly, she failed her test as commander-in-chief. In Benghazi, we had a perfect example of how she would work were she president. She ignored the warnings, she did not reinforce the garrison, and when the attack was underway, she turned her back. I think that she is also fundamentally corrupt. I think that the Clintons became sort of a RICO, a racketeering organization, where Bill collected speaking fees that were really thinly disguised bribes, and Hillary took actions as Secretary of State to pay off the people that made the payoffs. For example, when Putin wanted to buy 20% of the U.S. uranium reserves, they paid Bill $1 million to give 2 speeches in Moscow. And as soon as the $1 million was deposited in Hillary's account, she okayed the deal. I think she knows nothing at all about economics. She's never talked about economics. It's never been one of her things, and that's going to be a crucial issue. I think she's pro-Muslim. Mm-hmm. I think that she's unduly influenced by Uma Abedin, her closest associate, who has a long history of involvement in radical Muslim activities, was raised in Saudi Arabia, and her mother is the editor of a journal that includes a lot of jihadist material. I think that Hillary lives in a bubble. I think by a combination of her White House and her Arkansas mansion tenure and State Department, she's become removed from the average person, doesn't share our lives, doesn't understand our problems. And I've got a whole bunch of others in the book.
We need to take a break in just about a minute, but before that, our show is aimed at retirees and near retirees primarily. Can you give us the Cliff Notes version at this point of how you think a Clinton presidency would impact them specifically?
Well, I think that she's going to take two systems on which retirees depend and fundamentally deform them, Social Security and Medicare. Um, where we will need to go to your break before I can fully explain it. But let me say with Medicare, she wants to lower the eligibility to 55, and eventually she wants to expand it to everybody, a single payer system. And that will take a well functioning system of Medicare and turn it on its head. The number of patients demanding care will soar. The number of doctors able to give the care will be limited. You'll get the same problems in Obamacare in Medicare. It'll spread the contagion that has basically ruined Obamacare and is causing it to implode. Lack of patient care, lack of doctors, lack of accessibility, and spread it to Medicare. When we come back, let's talk Social Security.
That's a great idea. It's a great segue into the break. Thank you very much, Dick Morris. We'll be right back, and when we are, we're going to actually talk a little bit about how Dick believes that a Trump presidency would be better, and whether or not Donald Trump, although Dick believes he can win the election, whether or not he can actually run the country. We'll be right back after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're here today with Dick Morris, author of the new book, Armageddon, How Trump Can Beat Hillary. Dick, let's talk about the economy specifically for just a minute.
Before we promised the viewers we'd talk about Social Security, just to finish the answer to your last question.
Perfect segue. That's where I was actually headed.
Hillary's plans will really endanger Social Security because she is being pushed to the left by Bernie Sanders people and is going to have to expand Social Security to a point where its financial stability will be in serious jeopardy. For all the propaganda about Social Security being in trouble, it's really not. Social Security is in fairly decent shape, and we have large numbers of younger people, largely immigrants, coming into the country, and eventually interest rates will recover and the fund will be all right. But it's a thinly balanced thing. And if we expand Social Security, as she is urging, which is to lower the retirement age when we really need to be raising it, and using Social Security to kind of fill the gap between when your 20 or 30-year career is over and age 65, that late 50s, 60s period, that's a population equal in size to those over 65. And if the Social Security system is burdened with that, the only way it can finance itself is by a significant increase in Social Security taxes. Right now, Social Security taxes do not cause much political havoc because they're only on the first 125 or so of income. But when they take that lid off and they raise the rate to accommodate the changes that Hillary wants to make, it's going to become an enormous burden, an enormous political issue, and sort of an intergenerational war.
Certainly. Wow, that's a mouthful. But now let's pivot. Let's talk about how a Trump presidency would actually be better for the retirees and pre-retirees, the members of the income generation that watch our show every week.
Well, I think that people do not understand the real Donald Trump. I know him very well. My father was his lawyer, and I've known him all my life. And Trump is not an ideologue. He certainly is not a proto-fascist like the left wants to make out. He's not a bigot. He's not a racist. He's a builder. He's a developer. His motto is basically get it built, get it done. I don't care whether it's left or right, make it happen. He's someone who is accustomed to getting stuff built and done and brushing aside the obstacles in his path. LaGuardia once said there's no Democratic or Republican way to clean the streets. And I think that that's Trump's motto. In a sense, Trump is basically saying, just give me the damn ball and let me get this stuff done. And I think that whereas Hillary would be government by committee and would be continuously influenced by all of the winds of political opinion, I think Trump will be focused on getting certain objectives met, reducing the deficit, bringing down the debt, restoring American competitiveness abroad, stopping illegal immigration into this country, stopping the refugee flows that jeopardize us, and enhancing our intelligence and national security capabilities. And I think those are crucially important to all Americans and to the audience of your show.
Okay. So what do you say to all the viewers who in some ways really want to vote for Trump, whether it's a vote for Trump or a vote against Hillary, but are afraid to pull that lever because they're afraid that Trump might be, as some say, too risky of a candidate? What would you say to those voters?
I would say that they have to recognize that, in Dylan's words, the times they are changing. Yeah. And the average person in the world is not prepared to sit back and let those who run the global economy continue to run it into the ground. They look at the record of the global economy. They look at the dysfunctional nature that it's assumed. And they no longer trust the elites, the IMF, the European Union, the World Bank, the UN, the Federal Reserve Board. They want a government that looks out for them, a government that's more nationalistic than global and puts the needs of the American people first. And I think Trump is going to do that. And I think that the Trump campaign will bring a reform in its wake that will assuage those concerns. Whereas if we go to Hillary, we will just make matters worse and ultimately lead to a more significant and perhaps destructive reckoning. The same impetus that led Britain to leave the European Union is leading Sanders and Trump voters to take over their parties and to demand an end to government by these elites in their own self-interest.
Well, and economically speaking, I think you said it best when you said that 114 million citizens are, at this point, really net contributors to the economy, and 107 million are net takers. And when that flips over in the other direction, all of a sudden we turn potentially into Greece or a Greece-like situation. So
retirees have to understand how delicately balanced Social Security is and Medicare is. There is no great resentment against it in the American economy now. There's no war on senior citizens. But yet, over half of our federal budget goes to the elderly. Over half. And if you take out debt service, it's almost 2/3 between Social Security and Medicare. And if that is expanded, as Hillary wants to do, it's going to cause fiscal havoc, huge tax levels,
sure,
and go down the same rat hole that Detroit is in or Greece is in.
Exactly.
More taxes on those who can pay, and therefore less and less productivity from
exactly.
them.
Dick, we need to leave it there, unfortunately. Time flies when you're having fun. I appreciate your insight, and I just received your book yesterday, but I absolutely cannot wait to read it. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Great. All right, stay with us. We'll be right back with more Between Myself and Morgan. We'll be right back.